Welcome, everyone. My name is Anna, and I manage programs at the Lake Bluff Library. Tonight, we've got Joe Orsolini here tonight from College Age Planners. Joe comes out once a year for us to talk to you about how to save money on college, which is only becoming a bigger deal each year. So if you have any questions, you can either ask them throughout the program as Joe pauses or save them to the end. We do ask if you have a question that's got some personal information, wait to the end and we'll stop the recording so that none of that is recorded on the cloud. All right. Joe, are you all set?
I'm ready.
It is all yours.
All right. Thank you, Anna. Don't pay the college sticker price. Our program this evening. A little bit about me so you know whether or not to pay attention to me. Joe Orsolini, College Aid Planners, been doing college planning now for over 20 years. We specialize in helping families through this financial aid process, helping them understand how the college aid process works, how to reduce financial aid, or pardon me, increase financial aid. We also, in addition to that, we also do tax returns. We do about 600 tax returns during the year for families. So we see what happens to these kids as they come out in the workforce. And as you'll learn later on, that's pretty valuable information. We also get into retirement planning as well. So we want to make sure that you don't spend all your money getting your kids off to college and forget about your retirement, which is easy to do. If you want to get a handout for tonight's program, since we're doing this online, if you go to my website, collegeaidplanners.com/handout, you can download a PDF copy of the main slides from tonight. So you'll have some takeaways from this, and we've got some narratives on those too. So it'll make it a little easier to recall things. So date night. Nothing says date night like going to a college planning seminar. I usually get a lot of couples at my program. And, you know, who knew that 18 or so years ago, some wine, some candles, a little romance would turn into a six-figure tuition bill. Now, that's one of my funnier jokes. Try to lighten the mood a little bit. Everybody comes in here all tense because they know the cost of college. And they know the college costs are out of control. Basically, since the mid-'80s, college costs have increased more than the rate of inflation. So, you know, it's a lot harder today for parents to get their kids off to college than it was for us, our parents, to get us going. So here's an example of that. I went to Bradley University down in Peoria from 83 to 87. My four-year total, the four-year sticker price was $35,349 for all 4 years combined. If you take a look at what Bradley cost last year, $51,420 was their cost of attendance. Now, that's a lot of money. If you think about that, $51,000, that's basically like buying a Jeep Grand Cherokee with leather seats. And in fact, you're buying that Jeep Grand Cherokee with leather seats every year for the next 4 years. Unfortunately, you don't get to drive the thing and there's no trade-in at the end. Now, one of the things I would tell you is, you know, we get this whole process of picking a college. We kind of get it backwards for folks. You know, we send the kids out, hey, find a school. 6 months later, we'll figure out what it costs, and then we'll try to pay for it. You'd never do that with another purchase, like maybe say a car. I mean, you send a kid out to do that. What are they going to pick? What kind of car? They kind of going to come back with a Kia Forte, which is about the same price as commuting down to UIC, or are they coming back with that Corvette convertible, which is the University of Michigan as an out-of-state student? So, you know, we want to make sure we get a hold of this process before these kids go out and make, you know, choices they may regret later on. So a little more on the car theme here. Sticker price, a little sticker shock for everybody. Nationally, four-year public universities average about $23,000. Unfortunately, here in Illinois, we're an above average state. Ours are averaging around almost $29,000 on average, our public schools. Four-year privates, almost $52,000 on average. And hitting $80,000 is not unusual these days for some of your elite colleges. But if you take a look at what people are actually paying for college after the grants, after the scholarships, after the tax breaks, you get a different picture. Four-year public schools drop down to about $19,000. Four-year private schools drop down to almost $33,000. But, here's the thing. They don't wheel a barrel full of money up to your dorm room and say, here you go, have at. There's a system in place. You have to know and understand that. And that's what we're going to go through tonight. But as we're getting to this, the main question you want to start asking is, why are we spending all this money on college? Why do people do it? Well, the quick answer is you'll earn nearly $1 million more over your lifetime with a college education. Now, we're in the days of fake news and fact checkers. So let's fact check this and see if it is indeed the truth. And I would mark this as a true sort of. If you take a look at the median high school graduate, they're going to earn about $1.5 million. Median college graduate, they earn about $2.5 million. So, there's your difference of $1 million. So yeah, this is sort of true, but you got to remember, you don't just get that college education. There's a cost to it. Somebody is going to be writing that check to get your kids off to college. So there's an opportunity cost to college. If you're going to spend $50,000 a year on college, if you'd simply take that money, put it in the bank for the next 5 and get 5% on it for the next 40 years, that would grow to $1.4 million. So if you have a choice between $1.4 million, spending $1.4 to earn $1 million, that's not a great payoff. You're kind of losing money on that deal. And again, this is in the median. This is on, more or less on average. Break-even point is about $35,000. You spend $35,000 over time, that would grow to $1 million, matching your lifetime earnings gain. So that's kind of your break-even point. Ideally, you want to, kind of keep it below that. Maybe you're going to do the junior college or the 2+2, or you find a cheaper school. That's really where you're going to get your bang for your buck on sending your kids off to college. So the moral here is there's a cost benefit to higher education, and you want to make sure that your college choices make good financial sense in the long term. Now we've got 3 key areas, 3 key ways we're going to reduce the overall cost of college. One is by maximizing need-based aid eligibility. This is, you're poor, or we can make you look poor on paper. They give you money. Secondly is targeting the right colleges for affordability. This is more than go to your state school because it has the cheapest sticker price. This is how do we target schools that are going to give us merit aid. Merit aid is we want your kid to come here, so we're going to knock something off the price. Finally, exploiting the various tax saving opportunities. There are a number of tax breaks that are out there to help families pay for college. We want to make sure that you're fully aware of them because it's a pretty decent chunk of money you don't want to leave on the table. Now, as we jump in, it's important to understand where the sources of money for college are coming from. 91% of all the money that's out there is administered by the colleges, which means they'll go out on your behalf and look at the federal government for money. They'll check with the state for any grants and scholarships. They may have their own endowments. Private donation foundations may have money. They'll put that package together and come back and say, here we go. This is what we found for you. 8% is administered by others. That's like your work program or your ROTC, VA programs. Finally, we get to that last little 1% sliver, which is private scholarships. Not nearly as much money out there as they'd have you believe in the media. Sometimes you'll hear it quoted, there's billions going claimed. That's really Pell Grants, which are federal buckets of money that people don't, it's an estimated number. They don't think people are applying. But private scholarships, the best option for you on the private scholarships is to look local. Your chamber, your Rotary, men's clubs, women's clubs, unions, trade associations, those kind of things are where you're going to find this money. I used to run the scholarship program for the Lombard Chamber of Commerce, and we'd give away 2 $750 scholarships. We'd have 12 to 15 kids applying for that. That's something you're going to have a shot of winning. You do the Dr. Pepper $1 million giveaway, it's you and 400,000 kids. You're not going to win that. Look local. So I would tell you to do is check with the high school. Anybody that's local is going to let the high school know, hey, we've got a scholarship. So that's going to be your best resource to find this money, private money. But, we want to fish where the fish are. So we're going to spend the rest of the evening talking about this college administered piece. And what kicks that off is you'll be completing 1 or possibly 2 financial aid forms. The main form you'll go through, every school in the country needs this, is the FAFSA form. Stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And this is required for all the federal aid programs, including loans. If nothing else, your kid wants a student loan, you have to go through this process. This is now a requirement to graduate high school. It's another interesting tidbit that's come out in the last couple of years. You have to fill this form out to graduate. And this form turns on October 1st of senior year of high school. So you can't quite fill it out yet. You got to wait till October 1st. There's a secondary form that you may run into called the CSS profile. About 250 of your more elite colleges in the country use this form. It has a much more extensive amount of information. The FAFSA has about 100 questions, standardized. I can tell you the exact formula. Each school has a custom model from the College Board folks who put out the CSS profile. So, it's going to look at across 3 different tax years, the 2 previous and 1 going forward. And then each school can also add their own questions. So on top of the standard 250 or so questions, schools can put their own. But again, this is mostly at your elite type colleges. These types of schools, by the way, schools that are requiring the CSS profile are typically schools that are going to match 100% of need. So higher income families will get, 100, 125, 150,000 may still get aid from these schools. But, you're up there, higher income families, you may want to avoid these schools if you're looking to get merit aid, because you're going to pay full boat to these types of schools. And we'll touch on this a little bit more. Now, every school has a deadline of when they want these forms. The system turns on October 1st. And, a lot of people tell you, oh, fill it out as fast as you can, as soon as you can, get on that computer at 12:01. You're not going to get more money if you jump on at 12:01 on October 1st compared to your neighbor down the street who's sleeping, not going to fill this thing out for 2 or 3 weeks. But every school has a preferred deadline of when they want this form, when they want to see the form handed in order to be considered for all the financial aid programs that they may have. As long as you meet that deadline, they'll consider you for all the programs. So don't think of this as like first come, first serve. It's more like showing up to dinner on time. You show up to Thanksgiving a half an hour ahead of time, do your greetings, commiserate, watch a little football. That food shows up. It's food time. You'll have your choice: white meat, dark meat, yams, potatoes, stuffing, the whole works. You show up to Thanksgiving a half hour late, you're scraping the wishbone. You probably got to eat the turkey leg. You're going to be, putting parsley together to make a salad. There's nothing left. Similarly with college, you got to be in before that preferred deadline. Now, what's going to happen is they're going to put together a financial aid package for you. Going to have a couple different things in it. Hopefully scholarships and grants, the best kind of financial aid. You don't have to, why? You don't have to pay it back. You might have to, hit a certain GPA or kick a ball through a set of goalposts or, play the tuba. As long as you do that, the money's yours. Additionally, there'll be maybe something called federal work study. What federal work study is it's called self-help aid. It's a program that gets kids jobs on campus. So the difference here is, this is money the kids will earn, hence the name self-help, but it also gets paid to them directly. It doesn't come off the tuition bill. Now, you'll see this on a lot of award letters. This list's on there, but this doesn't come off. They have to earn this money. Also, there'll be student loans. Everybody that fills out that FAFSA form gets a student loan. There's 2 types: subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized are interest-free while the kids are in school. Unsubsidized are not. In either case, you don't have to make payments until after you graduate. But on an unsubsidized loan, the interest is going to pile on to what you owe at the end. Now, again, these loans are in the kids' names. They are responsible. The student's responsible. No co-signers. Everybody qualifies. There is another type of loan that you'll see is something called a parent loan or a plus loan. This is a loan to you, mom and dad, to help that will allow you to pay for college. This, unlike the kids' loans, which don't have a credit or background check, this has a bit of a background check. But as long as you're not 90 days late on something or have missed the student loans payments in the past, you'll get approved for this loan. The problem with this loan is they don't ever look at it whether or not this loan makes sense. They'll let you borrow the full cost of college without ever asking, hey, can this person afford the loan? So I've seen, families making $13,000 a year get offered $20,000 loans by the federal government. This is an easy way to bury yourself. And if you've got, 3 kids, don't be taking out student loans for the first one for freshman year. That's just a recipe for disaster because the government lets you dig yourself a big hole pretty quickly. So circling back around to the student loans piece, the kids' loans, I still have a lot of folks, saying, hey, I worked my way through college. I had a job, summer school or summer job, got a student loan. I paid for college. My kids can borrow the money. Not really the case today, because there's a limit to how much you can borrow through a federal student loan. It's $5,500 freshman year, $6,500 sophomore, $7,500 junior and senior year, for a grand total of $27,000. That's all the kids can borrow in their name without a cosigner. And when they get done, the student loan payment on that's about $275. That may tick up a little bit with interest rates going up here, but it's not too bad of a number. It will fit in most budgets after college. Problem is, when you start going beyond this number, that's when you really start messing these kids up with their lifestyles. You double that loan amount, you double the payment, and that really can cripple kids going forward. So I really don't like to see families go beyond this base amount. So next up, let's talk about maximizing your need-based aid eligibility. And what this is you either are poor, we make you look poor on paper, low income, they give you money. So how they get to this is once you fill out that financial aid form, what happens is there's a number that gets generated, something called your expected family contribution, or your EFC. Now, I will tell you, your EFC number is not what you are going to pay for college. In the history of giving things names, this is the worst name ever given to something, because it is not what you're going to pay. In fact, this name is so bad, Congress changed the name of this calculation. Really, it's a baseline number. The calculation determines if you're going to be eligible for certain state and federal aid programs. But they've changed this going forward next year to be called the Student Aid Index. Now it's going to be the SAI. But how they get to this EFC number, this SAI number, is through something called the needs analysis formula. And this formula is going to take a look at a couple things. First off, your income for both the students and the parents. Kids get to earn about $7,000, then 50 cents of every dollar they earn after that goes towards this EFC number. Parents, you get allowance. Right now, it's based on the number of people in the family, number of kids in college, and then it ranges anywhere from 22 pretty quickly up to 47%. It's not only what you earn, though, it's what you own. It's your assets are included in this formula as well. Student assets, they want 20% of from $1. Parents, they give an allowance based on the number of, based on the age of the oldest parent, age of the oldest parent, and then it's 5.65% after that. Now, interestingly, this year, the asset protection allowance is 0. So really, it's any assets in the parent's name from $1. Certain things count, certain things don't count as assets. Basically, anything you've got liquid cash in the bank, checking, savings, money market, CDs, all count. You have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, they're going to count those. 529 plans are considered assets. If you've got rental properties, they will count those. If you've got a vacation homes, if you've got a business, they'll want to know and it's more than 100 employees, it gets included. Less than 100 employees, it does not get included. So what does not count as an asset, most importantly, first off, is your family home. House is not considered an asset. Also, your retirement plans, your IRA, your 401k, your 403b, not included in the financial aid formula, on the FAFSA form. Let me be clear about this. If you're doing a CSS profile at one of those elite colleges, they will take a look at your home and they will take a look at your retirement. For most of us, looking at FAFSA schools, not going to be included. So make sure you understand that distinction. One other concept I want to cover here is something called the base income year. What the base income year is the tax year that corresponds to a financial aid award year. For example, aid for a freshman year of college is based on the tax return that begins January of the sophomore year of high school. So it's a lot earlier than most folks are realizing. You're not thinking about college until senior year, but you don't realize that, hey, this all started back sophomore year of high school. And here's a little chart that kind of shows you the FAFSA form actually looks 2 years back from when you're going to college. So something to keep in mind, it starts earlier, but it will also end a bit earlier. So if you've got assets or cashing things in, and it may impact your financial aid, you can kind of wait till those last couple of years. So now that I've told you all this about need-based aid, everyone always gets paranoid. They're trying to figure out how to hide money and where can I put it, and so it doesn't, show up on the financial aid formulas. I'm here to tell you, if you are in six-figure income, you're not going to get any need-based aid, because the main driver of this formula is your income. And once your income's in six figures, you're going to be on, your EFC number is going to be beyond any of these state and federal aid programs that are determined by that EFC. For example, your federal Pell Grant, which can be a $6,900 bucket of money. To qualify for that, you have to have an income below probably about $50,000. If you're in the state of Illinois, our Illinois MAP grant, you need to be below probably $65,000 or $70,000. So once you get beyond that $70,000 or so number, really you're switching over to targeting colleges, because you're not going to be getting any of that need-based money. And really, for most families, this is where where they're going to save on college. Because really what we're talking about here is merit aid. Merit aid is, we want your kid to come to the school, we're going to knock something off the price. Why do they do this? Well, a couple of reasons. First off, academics. High ACT scores, high class ranks, colleges like smart kids. Now, you don't have to have the valedictorian in order to be to get merit money. Ideally, you want to position your kids so they are going to be in the top 25% of that school student population. Also, athletic or extracurricular involvement. Sure, if you're a Division I football or basketball player, might be a full ride for you. Maybe you play the oboe in the orchestra. Maybe the two oboe chairs have graduated and they're looking for an oboe player. If you've got some extracurricular thing, try to use that to your advantage. It's leverage. Diversity. Diversity can be a lot of different things. Black, white, male, female, Asian, Hispanic, all that kind of good stuff. Number one diversity on college campus is geography. Colleges want to have a wide swath of people coming through them, all different backgrounds, all different places, all different countries. So, usually when you go on a tour of the campus, one of the first three slides I'll talk about is all their geographic diversity. But here's the thing, if your kids want to go away to school, have them go away to school. Lots of kids from Illinois are going to Indiana, Wisconsin, and Iowa schools. How many kids are going to a small liberal arts college down in New Mexico? Maybe they want to build a more geographic presence. I had a client a few years ago that went to Marist College in New York, and she got a grant, and I kid you not on this one, it was called the Not From the Northeast Corridor Grant. She got $4,000 from not being from New Jersey, New York, or Pennsylvania. Next up would be legacy scholarships. Who knew that you could turn your college stories into cold hard cash? Many schools will give money to another, next generation coming through. Sometimes they'll even go, grandparents, aunts, uncles. I went to Bradley University, as I mentioned. It's $1,500. My sister was at Elmhurst College. It's $1,000. I know North Central College in Naperville here, they'll give you $1,000 if somebody who graduated there just drops your name. Why do they do this? Well, they know the more generations of a family that comes through, more likely that family is to make a donation. Which leads me to my next item, attracting future donors. If you are filthy rich loaded, go through the financial aid process. Let them know, hey, I've got money. And maybe you might want to name a building after somebody. But no, in reality is one of the things that's driving this is the fact that wealthy families are getting a bigger and bigger share of the financial aid pie. And the thing driving this is the fact that, colleges are really, the federal government is really concerned with college graduation rates. And so they're breathing down their neck. And colleges know that, if a family has assets, that family is more likely to be able to weather some kind of difficulty or challenge, and that family's going to make it through. So, you've got two families each making $150,000. Maybe they've got $100,000 of savings. And this other family over here, they've got 150 of income, but no savings. They're relying on every bit of financial aid and loans they can get to pay for college. Something bad happens to these two families. Who's going to be able to make it through? The family with assets. So let the schools know, hey, my kid's more likely to get out on time and graduate by filling that form out. Next up, I want to talk about school selection. And one thing I also want to pause for a second here. What I'm telling you here on these school tips, this is 20 years of history with this. We do a couple hundred FAFSAs, couple hundred clients come through every year. This is 98% real world what's going to happen. There's always 2% of, hey, wow, how did that happen? But I'm giving these rules and guidelines because this is what, really what's going to be happening. So first off, out-of-state public universities, probably one of your most expensive options. when you go out of state, there's no tuition discounts. You know, in state, we're discounting your tuition. Out of state, you don't get those. Also, state schools don't have a whole lot of merit money. You know, any endowments they have, it goes to run the schools and keep them cheaper for taxpayers. So any money they may have is typically given to the in-state residents. You know, a lot of kids, when they say they want to, you know, go to some of these schools, they want to go out of state, right? They want to go to Wisconsin or Iowa or Michigan. You know, nobody's coming back and saying, hey, I want to go to Grand Valley State, Winona State. The kind of the second tier, not second rate, but second tier schools in those states. The interesting thing on that is you can go to those schools I just mentioned for about $27,000, $28,000 as an out-of-state student, which is pretty much what it's going to cost you to go to our second tier northern, southern, eastern, western schools here in this state. So if you're looking to go out of state, maybe sometimes look at some of the second tier schools in those states, schools in the MAC conference or schools with a state in their name. You'll get a better value for those. Also, staying in state, you have access to the state financial aid programs. Here in Illinois, we have our Illinois MAP grant, which certainly helps out lower income families. As I said, about $70,000 and less in income. Also programs for teachers, nurses, ophthalmologists. So, you know, whether you go public or private, you have access to that money. Finally, private colleges. Yes, private colleges are going to have the $50,000, $60,000, up to $80,000 sticker prices, but these are also schools that have merit money that normally it's routine that they're going to discount. It's not unusual to get $15,000, $20,000 merit award with your acceptance letter before they've even seen your financial aid. So in many cases, private colleges will be as cheap, if not cheaper, than a state school. One of the other interesting things about private colleges is that kids are more likely to get out on time from a private college as compared to a public university. I will tell you this, nationally, only 56% of kids that start out at a four-year school will get out on time. So that begs the question, what does on time mean? And most of you are thinking, hey, 4 years, that's on time. That's mom and dad time. On time to the federal government means 150% or 6 years. So let me back that up. Only 56% of kids that start out at a four-year college will get out in 6 years. Now, nationally, it's about 76% of private schools will get out on time. 49% of public schools get out on time. So that's something to, you know, put into the calculus when you're thinking, how much is this school going to cost me? It's, you know, also what's my chances of getting out on time? So now that we have these kind of general rules and guidelines, how do we put these in play? Well, first off, you want to make sure you're looking at between 4 to 8, maybe 6 to 10 schools, because you want schools competing for your kids. You might, you know, like school A, but school B's, you know, got a better financial aid package. It's $4,000 less. There's nothing wrong with going back to school A and saying, hey, we really like you, but, you know, my daughter can't wait to get on campus and play the oboe, but you're, you know, $4,000 less than school B over here. Any way you could take money out of the equation so we can say yes to your school. Take that out of, you know, one of the factors we have to consider. Maybe they say yes, maybe they say no, but you have to have the award letter for school B because they're going to want to see it. So you can't bluff this. Also, it usually works better at private colleges, and they have to be like schools. You know, you can't play Northern Illinois off of Princeton. You know, they kind of have to be in the same league. So that leads me to, you know, how do you find schools that are competing for your students? Well, one of the easy ways is look at schools that are in the same athletic conference. Schools that compete in the athletic field probably also are competing for the same kind of geographic student populations. You've got Elmhurst College and North Central College here in the Chicago area. Certainly, if I know someone's looking at North Central, I'll have them throw an app in Elmhurst just to keep them honest. You know, $3,000, $4,000. It's a 10-minute phone call. I've seen it happen dozens of times. DePaul and Loyola, two urban Catholic universities with a lot of overlapping programs. Do you think if the financial aid officer at Loyola sees that she's competing against DePaul, she's going to try a little harder? Absolutely. I've heard it out of her own mouth. You know, get schools competing for your kids. Finally, the last thing here, be the big fish in a small pond. You know, so many times as parents, we get caught up into brand names on these schools. You know, where do they fall in the rankings? I'm here to tell you where you get your undergraduate degree does not matter. My philosophy in this whole system is put your money into attend a solid school for your undergraduate degree, put your money into graduate school. That's where that brand name is going to matter. In fact, there was a study done by a Princeton professor, guy by the name of Alan Kruger. And he went back 25 years, found two sample groups of kids, equal academic profiles. One got into elite Ivies and went there. The other got into elite Ivies, but went someplace else. He tracks those two groups over 25 years. No significant difference in income. Repeats that study 10 years later, same results. It's your kids. Give them the credit, not the school they attend, that make them successful. So there's your academic version of this. But we wanted a more real world, hands-on way to look at this. So we took a look at what's a person's most visible symbol of success? Your house. You know, if you've got a big giant house, probably somebody's pretty successful living in there. But what comes with a big giant house? Well, first off, a big giant mortgage, but more than likely a big giant tax bill. Now, tax bills are things you can look up. You can see these tax bills. You can look them up at the county clerk's office and see who lives in that house. And then you can go and look at on LinkedIn, compare where do they get their school? Where do they get their schooling? Where do they get their undergrad? Where do they go to grad school? So we took a look at the top 25 real estate tax bills in our corporate headquarters here in Glen Ellen, upper middle class town, very, very similar, I think, to Lake Bluff, actually. So we found the top 25 real estate tax bills paying between $40,000 and $70,000 each year in real estate taxes. They're writing that check every year. So what do you think the number one school was attended for undergraduates? Actually, the University of Illinois, our state flagship school. Nearly a quarter of these folks, 6 of 25, went to the University of Illinois. Number two was actually a two-way tie between Notre Dame, there's one of your elite schools, and Northern Illinois, kind of a second tier, again, not second-rate school here in Illinois. If you took a look at the rest of them, it was a hodgepodge. You had a couple of elites, Cornell, Northwestern. If there's any determination I could make out of this, it's probably attend a state flagship school, because you've got Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Indiana, adding to U of I, and then just a whole bunch of smaller liberal arts type colleges. No real pattern here. What I would tell you though, undergraduate degree in the cheap, if you went back to this list and looked at the graduate schools, that's where you saw a Harvard's, Stanford's, a Vanderbilt, a Notre Dame. That's where that brand name matters. So undergraduate degree in the cheap, put your money into graduate school. Cost saving ideas, other ideas. First off, live at home. I don't know if this is worse for the students or the parents, but if you guys can tolerate each other for a little while, you can save on room and board. I mean, room and board these days is $12,000 to $15,000. So that's a lot of money. You can put a couple years in, maybe, going to the community college. Also, sticking in this housing realm, become an RA, the resident advisor, the grown up on the floor. They'll pick up your housing costs, which is not a bad deal. AP courses, summer school. I always recommend folks, AP courses, pick up a summer school course. You want that bank of credits, because somewhere along the line, the kids are going to switch a major, get a teacher they don't understand. They'll get sick. This keeps them on track to get out in that 4-year time frame, because that 4.5, 5th, 6th year, it's not just the tuition, room, and board. It's the opportunity cost of not being in the workforce. It's $40,000, $50,000 that you'll never have a chance to earn back because you took the wrong sequence of chemistry classes somewhere and had to drop, or you switch majors. So get out in 4 years. Exploiting the various tax saving opportunities. I kind of keep this short here, not to make you tax experts, but there are some tax breaks for having kids in college, paying college tuition. The main one's the American Opportunity Credit. The way this works is you spend $4,000 on tuition and books, you get a $2,500 credit, that's money back in your pocket, on your federal taxes. This can be used 4 times during your undergraduate college, and it's also refundable. If you don't pay any taxes, they'll refund you the money. Now, there are some income phase outs, 80 to 90 for single and head of household, 160 to 180 for married filing jointly. 4 years of college is actually 5 tax years. So after those use this 4 times, you can do something called the lifetime learning credit. The way this works, it's a 20% credit. You spend up to $10,000. They give you a $2,000 tax break. Interestingly, this one can be used for undergrad or graduate school. So say you're going back and getting your, I don't know, library degree, graduate degree, you can use this tax break. Again, the phase outs are similar in this case as well. Next up, let's go through some case studies. Kind of giving you a whole lot of information. Now let's kind of give you some case studies to see how this all gels together. First case study was a single mom, had 3 kids. Her son had $35,000 in savings. This was gifts from the grandparents. And this inflated his EFC calculation, as the expected family contribution. Mom earned around $45,000. Net worth, not substantial for her, but the kid had money in his name, and that was causing problems. So the EFC for this family, when they came in, was $9,500. So $9,500 in the state of Illinois, you're not going to get a Pell Grant. It's too much for the Illinois MAP grant. You're not getting anything. But what we're able to do in this case is we use something called the simplified needs test. So depending on which tax forms they file, and also the easy way is if you get the free school lunch program, so we sign this kid up for free school lunch, you don't have to eat it, but you have to just be signed up for it. If you do that and you're below that $50,000 number, next year it goes to 60, they won't include your assets in the financial aid formula. So in this case, we got them signed up. They simplified needs test. EFC drops to $2,500. Now they're getting Pell Grants. Now they're getting MAP grants, another pretty sizable chunk of money that they get. They're now eligible for. So let's take a look at this student and some of the aid offers they got. Just a little background again: 2,500 EFC, 25 in the ACT, 52, top 10% of the high school class. They were looking at the University of Illinois, our state flagship school, great school. So they got $8,000 of need-based aid. They got no merit aid. State schools, you don't get a lot of merit aid. So they were out of pocket around $17,000. Not a bad offer. They also were looking at a private school. The private college cost around $49,000 for them. And mom and dad could have said, don't bother. It's too expensive. We can't afford it. Well, would have been a mistake, because while they got a little bit less need aid because they were out of state, they got $28,000 of merit aid. That's a great aid package. I'll come back to that in a minute. Loans, they got a couple extra, special loans they got, but they were out of pocket only about $7,000 this family. So, if they hadn't looked at that private school, would have paid more than they needed to. But what happened with this young lady was, she worked the system. You're part of the kid's job is to market themselves to these schools because schools have a limited bucket of resources for merit aid. They kind of overpromise, knowing that not every kid's going to accept it. So they're very judicious about who they're promising this money to. So what happened was the admissions counselor from the college came to the school, set up a table lunch at the lunchroom. She filled out a card, went, introduced herself, asked a couple questions, got on their radar. So later on, she went and took a tour of the campus. Didn't just show up on the weekend. She took a guided tour, again, registered, so they knew she'd been there and visited. The college did a road show. A lot of colleges do road shows, Sunday afternoon at a hotel. They'll bring in some alumni, tell you how great the school is. She went to that, she started asking questions. Hey, what's the sushi like in the cafeteria? Closing questions. So when it came time to hand out money, you've got this girl that's asking, been to 3 or 4 or 5 different events. She's asking closing questions, or this other kid here that just filled out the Common App you've never heard of, no one's ever talked to, you just showed up on the radar. What kind of, who are you going to give the money to? Obviously the kid that's shown a whole lot of interest. So let's talk about her her classmate. This family earned about $80,000. I call this the smart kid. $80,000. The EFC was about $10,000, 33 in his ACT, number 9 in his class, captain of the football team. Outstanding kid, kind of guy you want to take home to mom. Remember talking to his mom, he deserved to get into one of these great schools. He applied to Harvard, Stanford, WashU, MIT, University of Chicago. Absolutely. He deserved to get in. I will never tell you don't apply to these schools. But remember, these are the elite schools. These schools have 4, 5, 6% admission rates. Unless you're raising a goat farm in Ecuador and have some crazy backstory behind you, you may not get into these. Probably, most likely you're not getting into these. So I told them these are fine, absolutely apply, but make sure you have some safety schools, schools that, maybe a state university, some private schools that are a fit academically as well as financially. Unfortunately, these folks didn't listen to my advice, and he got shot down by all these schools. Again, great candidate, it happens. So his safety school was actually the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is over $50,000. He got no need-based aid, no merit aid, got a student loan. So his mom and dad are borrowing $45,000 a year, and a plus loan to send him to college. 4 times $45,000. Now, if this young man had simply done what his other classmate had done, looked at the state school, that has saved him $20,000. Times 4, that's $80,000. Looked at a private school and gotten a similar offer. That's $30,000. Times 4, that's $120,000. This young man cost his family $120,000 because he was too stubborn to look at some other schools, too pig-headed. Drive me nuts talking about this one. So, a lot of this is knowing who's got money and who's going to want you to go there if you want to make it affordable. So next up, let's talk about a couple schools out here in the western suburbs of Chicago, far western suburbs. We've got North Central College in Naperville, runs around $54,000, and Northern Illinois, cost of attendance is around $29,000. Looking at these two schools, if you're picking one of these schools, which one are you going for? Probably Northern, because it's way cheaper, way more reasonable. But remember, I talked about, kids at private colleges get a lot of merit aid. And these are actually numbers you can look up from the College Navigator website from the Department of Ed. 100% of freshmen at North Central last year got money from the school, and on average, it was almost $23,000. And this dropped their net price of school. You can actually see this because the government tracks this. Those earning over $110,000 on average paid about $29,000. Not nearly as much money available at Northern, and that number also includes some of your scholarship athletes. So on average, folks are paying around $23,000. So there's about a $6,000 difference, or $24,000 over 4 years, difference between these schools. Now, was that $24,000? Is that enough to sway you one way or another at these colleges? Now, before you answer that, why are we going to college? We're going to graduate, right? Let's look at the graduation rates of these two schools. 4-year graduation rate at North Central is 61%. It's only 25% at Northern, okay? And again, I'm not slamming one school over the other, but it's just a fact. In fact, you have to go 6 years at Northern, and you're still not at the 4-year graduation rate of North Central. So let me ask you this. Is North Central $24,000 more expensive getting out in 4 years? Or is it $24,000 cheaper getting out in 6? So again, this is something you got to put in that calculus when you're figuring out schools. So let's take a look at a family making $110,000. That was like the government's magic number. EFC for this family is $27,000. You're not getting any need-based aid. So that's $108,000 a year. Let's assume this family has no savings. They're going to do $27,000 of student loans, $12,000 of tax credits. This family's out of pocket around $69,000. Now that's a pretty big number, but let's break that down into the 48-month payment plan. So you'd be on the monthly payment plan, $1,438. So my question now is, where are you getting that $1,438 in your family budget? And this used to be a long time ago where I'd end my seminar and everybody would have real long faces and go march out into traffic. But I want to make sure we leave here on a higher note, so I've added another case study here. The 2+2 option. 2 years of community college. I'm out in DuPage. We have the College of DuPage. Tuition's fairly reasonable. You get a student loan that covers that. You get some tax credits. Then maybe a transfer down to UIC and commute, living at home. Again, might have to pay a little out of pocket, some tax credits, but you're there for about $150 a month. Somewhere between $150 a month and $1,438, you can get this college degree. So it's feasible. Now, it's also important to understand what you have available. That's going to be one of the keys here. But one of the things I want to go through now is the timeline on all this. So we understand the timeline of senior year of high school. So there's really two tracks. You've got the admissions track and you've got the financial aid track. The admissions piece of this opens up October 1st. You really won't ramp up until September, October, because you have to do some interaction with the counselors at the school. But ideally, you want to have this done by November 1st, because we talked about deadlines, financial aid deadlines. There's also admissions deadlines. If you get it done by November 1st, you'll meet all the early action, early decision deadlines. This is the way to go. Secondly, the financial aid track, this system, as I mentioned, opens up October 1st. Not first come, first serve, but you also want to get this completed by November 1st. So November 1st is the magic deadline for financial aid and admissions. So it's not mom and dad ragging. It's Mr. Orsolini, that college guy I heard at the library, is telling you this. Get it all done by November 1st. So next up, you're waiting on the admissions letters and award letters. So these could come anywhere, most likely between mid-November and January, although some elite colleges will push this back as far as April 1st. Now, you're going to get an admissions letter separate from the financial aid letter, but sometimes the admissions letters will have money on there that says, congratulations, you're admitted. We're going to give you $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. That's not the final award letter. That's wet your whistle money. There will be a financial aid final award letter, and that will have the student loan piece on it. So once you have all those letters, that's when you're going to sit down and you're going to go through and start making your decisions. Now, I think I mentioned in the beginning that my son just is a freshman in college. He just went off last year. So I went through this whole process last year as my own client. And let me tell you, you don't want to be the son of a college planner, because I made the poor kid apply to 35 different colleges. For me, he was a research project. I knew the kid's grades, which were fantastic. I knew the finances. So I wanted to see what all these different schools were going to offer. But, you know, he had an SAT of 1420, off the charts, weighted, unweighted GPA, really smart kid, all kinds of involvement. You know, this is like 98% percentile kid out there. So, you know, I'm blessed. He was a great prospect for me, helped this whole process out. But as I said, we looked at 35 colleges. These are the schools that he got into. We were 22 of 22 before he got his first waitlist offer. But I point this out to show you that of these schools, we went from $16,500 all the way to $61,000. There's a $45,000 difference in the out-of-pocket cost at these schools. So, you know, depending on what school you select, even a kid with that fantastic academic profile, you could still be paying a lot of money. So it's important to know, you know, what schools are going to have money, who's going to want your kids to go to attend there. So let's jump over to the schools he didn't get into. So, you know, got waitlisted at a couple, you know, all these elite colleges he didn't get into. Again, no crazy backstory. He's just kind of a normal suburban kid. I have a couple highlighted here: Florida, Florida State, and Dayton. I mentioned these three schools because this is, you know, 10% of his schools. These schools all ended up having issues with his application. So I have these here as kind of a caution. Don't just assume everything's going smoothly through the system. Florida's schools this past year got inundated with applicants. So they were way behind on things. Florida University, they sent him a notice saying we didn't get some document, even though everything was checked off online. They just dropped his application out of the cold blue in March. Florida State, they kind of lost it. And then they said, well, yeah, we'll let you in with spring admission. Dayton couldn't find it. We talked to them a couple times. They said, oh yeah, we'll get it to you. They let him know 2 days before the deadline. And we'll let you know in 2 more weeks what the financial aid package is. Point here being, these schools, you know, messed up. You got to be on this stuff as a parent, and, you know, because you can't always rely on the kid. So let's talk about the schools he got into versus the schools he didn't get into. So he was an engineering major. And if you take a look at the U.S. ranking, U.S. News rankings, Michigan, Illinois, and Purdue, 3 of the top 10 engineering schools he got into. He didn't get into, you know, some of your elite colleges, Harvard, Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, Wash U, but take a look at how those schools are ranked for engineering. You know, they're in the lower 20s, mid 30s, even 45. is he busted up because he didn't get any schools? Is the value really there at these colleges, based on the rankings? No. So, it is what it is. We went with the schools he was in. So, as time whittled down, we kind of were looking at 3 schools: Michigan, Purdue, and Iowa State. And I will tell you this, end of March, we ended up going on a visit to Purdue. We were at one of their mechanical engineering road shows, and sitting there, the second slide in talked about the fact that the median SAT score for mechanical engineers was a 1400. And I turned and looked at my son with his 1420 and realized he is average at that school. He's no different than anybody else. And I should have just gotten in the car and driven home, because I knew, even though we hadn't gotten a financial aid award yet, I knew we were going to get nothing from Purdue. And Purdue is a school that actually, in my past history, has actually had the magic dust fall on kids. So, he was not anything special at that school, which, ideally you want to be the big fish in a small pond. So, we kind of got down to Michigan and Iowa State. And with Michigan, I'll point out a couple things. A couple of folks that I know in the admission side of the world, the college planning people on the admission side, were kind of surprised that he got in, because they said, oh, we had kids with better academic profiles. There were kids out there, but they didn't get in, and really were surprised that he got some merit money. And here's the thing I think that played in here. He's going through writing all these essays for all these schools, and he was getting sick after, 35 or so. And, they were just kind of boiling down to, oh, I really want to go to your school. You got a great reputation. I'm looking to get a good job, blah, blah, blah. I said, Steve, you got to go through these things and find something so that looks like you're interested, so they know you've researched them and know it. Took a look at the mechanical engineering site on the college campus, and found out that they, in fact, have the world's largest working Rubik's Cube on their campus. And the Mechanical Engineering Club maintains this every year. Now, my son had, been a long time Rubik's Cuber. He was, down to 20 seconds and incorporated that into his essay. I'm convinced that's what, helped push him into the school and even get him some money, because he looked like he knew, had been really interested in that school. So he was a good bet to be the kid promising that money. But when all said and done, taking a look at Michigan versus Iowa State, there was a 2-week period in the spring here where, even though I'm in this business and know better, and realized that he could go 3 years at Iowa State for what 1 year of Michigan was going to cost us, I spent about 2 weeks trying to figure out how to justify sending him to Michigan. Not so much that he wanted it, but I wanted to be able to brag at the cocktail parties, my kid's going to Michigan. I mean, I'll admit it, even though I know better, and finally had some people talk me off the ledge. But what really got me off the ledge was, as I mentioned earlier, I do tax returns. So I had 6 of my engineering students who were 2 years out of college all come in with their W-2s. So, it was Purdue, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Virginia, Miami, Bradley. All of those kids made plus or minus $72,000. They all made the same. It didn't where they went to school. They were all in nearly the same bracket. So I realized no matter where my kid went to school, Michigan, Iowa State, he would, he'd come out and he'd make the same amount of money. And in fact, back to kind of the Purdue thing, he would have been average. I told him, hey, go to the school where you're going to be the top kid. You're the big fish in the small pond. Good things happen to those kids. Schools don't come in and say, hey, I want to recruit the middle of the road kid who graduated in the middle of your engineering class. They want the top kids. So that's why he selected Iowa State. That's the moral of the story there. But so here's back to my timeline here. So it's March, April, May 1st, you have to make your decision. Now, what happens if you get to March, April, and you realize, none of these schools are going to fit our budget? We got to scramble and get some other schools in here. Well, you can't, because there's nothing left. You missed that November 1st deadline, remember? Schools have filled up all their seats. Schools have handed out all their money. There's nothing left. And this is what leads to bad decisions with families. There's no time to circle back. You're either going to community college or we're going to end up borrowing a ton of money. And you think it was tough saying no to your kids at this age, kid in the candy aisle. Try telling your, high school senior you can't afford this college and they can't go there and they're going to have to go to community college. So The most important thing I could tell you out of this presentation is you have to get the school selection piece right in the fall. Schools that fit academically, but also financially, because if you don't, it will lead to a lot of bad decisions and bad choices. So with that, I will open things back up and see if we have any questions.